Even with the added space we got from the boat, the minivan was still pretty full. I sneaked my pillow on board at the last second because I decided I was entitled to at least one luxury item. I figured Roderick would want to sit in the back of the van because whenever we go anywhere as a family, he likes to stretch out and take a nap. Every once in a while, we'll forget Roderick is even back there. This Easter, we made it halfway through church before Mom realized Roderick never made it out of the van. Back when we had a station wagon, me and Roderick used to sit in the way back together in a seat that faced the rear window. But we got in big trouble when we played a practical joke on Mom and Dad that ended up getting us pulled over by the police. We held up signs that said, "These people are kidnapping us." When we got in the van today, Roderick offered me the back seat. I accepted before he could change his mind, but I should have known his offer was too good to be true. Before we pulled out of the driveway, Mom said we were taking a special guest along for the ride. For a second, I was worried we were picking someone else up, because with all our stuff in the van, they'd have to sit on the roof. But Mom opened her purse and pulled out a piece of paper with a drawing on it. The drawing was Flat Stanley, a character from a book I read in second grade. Flat Stanley is a boy who gets squashed by a bulletin board that falls off his bedroom wall in the middle of the night. And when they pull the bulletin board off him, he's as thin as a piece of paper. I thought it was pretty cool that Flat Stanley could fold himself up and get mail to his grandma's or have his brother fly him like a kite. But I'll tell you this, if Flat Stanley had a brother like Roderick, I guarantee he wouldn't survive a whole day. Roderick would probably stick him in a shredder or something. I really liked the book, but it kind of freaked me out too. One thing it did was give me a deathly fear of bulletin boards. In second grade, everyone in my class had to color in a cutout of Flat Stanley and mail him to a friend or relative who lived far away. Then that person was supposed to take a picture of Flat Stanley in front of something interesting and mail him back with the photo. My friend Rowley sent Flat Stanley to a bunch of his relatives and got lots of cool pictures back. Rowley even sent him to his uncle who lives in Asia, and he took a picture of Flat Stanley in front of the Great Wall of China. Well, the first person Mom sent my Flat Stanley to was her cousin Stacy, who lives out in Seattle. But she probably wasn't the best choice. Stacy is one of those people who hoard all sorts of stuff like newspapers and magazines. So Mom should have known that once her cousin got her hands on Flat Stanley, he wasn't coming back. Today, Mom said she was going to take photos of our new Flat Stanley in front of all the cool places we visit and then make a scrapbook of our trip. And as soon as we got on the highway, she started snapping pictures. But she was probably a little too eager because her first few pictures weren't exactly keepers. When Mom wasn't taking pictures, Flat Stanley was taped to the front air conditioning vent. All I can say is he was having a much better ride than I was. The windows in the back of the van don't open, and the vents were blocked by all our luggage, so I wasn't getting any cold air. What made me even more uncomfortable was the fact that Mom was in control of the trip. Mom always tries to make things about education, and I knew she was going to turn this experience into one long lesson. She's been doing that ever since I was little. I can remember when I got scratched by Grandma's cat, and Mom tried to turn it into a teaching moment. C-A-T, cat. Sure enough, a half hour into the trip today, Mom started in with the educational stuff. She had borrowed a bunch of CDs from the library that teach Spanish and said we'd use the long stretches on the road to learn a new language as a family. Mom's always saying that learning a foreign language is the best thing you can do for your brain. That might be true, but I think she should leave the actual teaching to the schools. Mom decided it would be a good idea to expose me to a foreign language early on. So when I was in first grade, she would put the Spanish-speaking channels on TV while we ate breakfast. Mom would repeat whatever they said on the television, but when she said the words, it came out a little bit different. Tengo hambre. Tango hamburgers. I ended up learning all sorts of phrases that weren't right. For example, the way you're supposed to say, "What's your name?" in Spanish is "¿Cómo te llamas?" Well, I know that now because I learned it in my middle school Spanish class. But when I was little, Mom taught me that "What's your name?" in Spanish is "Te amo," which actually means "I love you." I just wish I had known that before I said it to a million different people. Today, Mom played the first 2 Spanish CDs, but she got frustrated that no one seemed to be paying attention, so she switched gears and said we were going to play a card game that she read about in her magazine. The game was called Alphabet Groceries, and you play it like this. The first player has to name an item you can get at the grocery store that starts with the letter A. The next person has to come up with an item that starts with B, and so on. If a player can't come up with an item that starts with their letter, they're out of the game. Mom said I should go first, so I said apple, which I guess was kind of an obvious choice. Roderick was up next, but he said he couldn't come up with any food that started with B. I'm pretty sure he was lying to get out of having to play the game, but with Roderick, you never know. When Roderick got knocked out, the turn went to Manny, who came up with his word right away. Apple. Mom started clapping, but I pointed out that bapple isn't a real word. She said Manny's just learning the alphabet and that we all need to encourage him. I quit in protest, and from then on, it was only Manny, Mom, and Dad playing. I really wished my earplugs weren't buried in my duffel bag under a pile of suitcases, because the next hour and a half was pretty painful. Yay! Zappo! All that talk of food was actually getting me kind of hungry, and when I saw a sign for a drive-through place at the next exit, I asked Mom if we could pull over. But Mom said we wouldn't be stopping at any of those kinds of restaurants because they don't serve real food. She said fast food places lure kids in with cheap plastic toys to trick them into eating sugar and fat, and we weren't going to fall into that trap. Mom said she had a much better alternative and handed me a lunch bag with my name on it. Mom said she got the mummy meal idea from Family Frolic, which I guess should not have come as a surprise. Inside the bag was a tuna sandwich, an orange, and a little carton of milk, plus something wrapped in tinfoil. Mom said I had to eat my fruit before I unwrapped the tinfoil, because that was my prize. But I wish I had just opened it right away, because I wouldn't have eaten the whole orange if I'd known the prize was a pack of maths flashcards. Roderick got flashcards in his lunch, too, and we could both see where this was headed. So before Mom could turn the next hour of the trip into a tutoring session, I pulled out one of the games Mom had packed in a big tote bag. The game I grabbed was called I Must Confess, and when Mom saw it, she got so excited she forgot all about the flashcards. I read the rules, which were pretty simple. One person takes a card from the deck and reads it out loud to everyone else. For example, I must confess I've met a famous person. If one of the players has done the thing that's written on the card, they earn a point. And the first player to get 10 points wins. I was a little skeptical at first, but I have to admit the game was actually kind of fun. I learned a lot of things about Mom and Dad I never knew before. I found out that Dad had a pet chameleon when he was a kid, and that Mom dyed her hair blonde once, which really surprised me. Believe it or not, even Roderick was getting into the game. He got a point for being the only person who'd ever slept out overnight for tickets to a concert, and another point for getting a bug stuck in his ear, which I remember like it was yesterday. Dad and Roderick were neck and neck with 9 points, and whoever scored next would win the game. Mom seemed really happy everyone was getting along and having fun. Then she pulled a new card out of the deck and read it. I must confess, I've toilet papered a neighbor's house.